Okay. We are going to be underway here with our workshop, and we're in a workshop format, so we won't have too many formalities. This is a joint workshop with the City Council of the City of Helotes, and we are underway at 4 p.m. It's January 14th, 2016. And we have the Economic Development Corporation here with us as well. And we have our different departments from the city: Public Works, Police, Fire, Development Services. And this is a presentation by Friesen Nichols. And this is part of our growth and management plan that they're doing for us for the city of Helotes and our extraterritorial jurisdiction. So without wasting any time, we'll turn it over to you guys. Please introduce yourself, and we'll get on with this. The purpose of this is for them to lay out a general outline of this program, as I understand it, and then they encourage all of us to ask questions, because from our questions will come how they develop this plan. And so they ask for our input. So department heads and staff members, EDC, and then us, council, we're encouraged to go ahead and ask questions. So that being said, take it away.
Thank you, Mayor. By way of introduction, my name is Dan Sefco, Planning Director with Friesen Nichols, and also with me this evening is Erica Craycraft Bartlett. She's our Senior Project Manager for this commission, and she'll be assisting along the way. I've actually met the council once in an interview, but I wonder if I might just go down the row here, and I know you all are on the EDC, but just quickly who you are and what you do in 50 words or less.
Hand the mic down there. Go ahead and pass the mic, use the mic and pass it. One more time, Diane.
Diane Anderson, Vice President with Broadway Bank.
Thank you.
Kathy Mitchell, retired high school principal.
Pat Wooten, retired from Vulcan Materials and ex-city councilman and 3 or 4 other commissions, and now on the EDC.
Ernest Groost, Development Services Director, City of Helotes.
Rick Walls, Helotes Fire Department, and second in charge of the department.
Rob Hunley, Police Department.
Joshua Mayer, the City of Helotes Public Works.
Byron Sandifer, L&V, we're the city engineer.
We know who Rick is. Okay, thank you very much for that. What we wanted to do this evening is we have about an hour and a half, and we can go longer or not take that long. It's up to you. But wanted to sort of outline what we're doing, the scope and why, and then also leave some room for dialogue between the EDC and the City Council on a couple 6 or 7 questions. The questions, as the mayor indicated, we're not formal here, and we're trying to get answers or actions, just trying to get some dialogue so I can begin to understand what the issues are regarding expansion, at least in your minds. So that's the purpose of it. This is our agenda. Wanted to give you just a brief overview of the scope. Kind of discussion of some of these areas that we might be interested in, and we have a few questions that would be applicable to each of these areas, and then what are the next steps. So this is day 1 on the job, and so I'll preface this by saying there's no recommendations tonight. We're gathering facts and understanding the issues here. Already mentioned, these are the 2 that you'll see working on this. We have a lot of other cast of characters at our company, but this is the team that you'll be working with. By way of background, we do know this, that you've acquired ETJ or extraterritorial jurisdiction from San Antonio. So we understand that is sort of the genesis or the reason that we're doing this study. We would like to plan for development in these areas, and we would like to see, we also know that the Economic Development Corporation has some ideas. We also know that you're a general law city, and so that is a fact, and right now at least annexation is voluntary. So we do understand these sort of facts about how we got here today. This is sort of the scope of services. I know the City Council saw this generally when we were commissioned for this project, but some of the goals and some of the steps in the process here is where should and can future growth occur, what types of growth are appropriate, and then how can the city and the EDC facilitate these areas. Included in with that is where we might expand first. We do appreciate your city engineer allowing us to use your maps and your information. We did look a lot of the water, sewer, and the water planning that you've been doing. The process is that we're going to identify, we're actually here, step one, at the beginning of step one. So we're going to be looking at the areas, different areas that we have or are able to expand. We're going to work on a little infrastructure assessment, really understanding and making sure that we have the ability to provide infrastructure to any of these areas that we expand, and we're working with L&V on that. Determination of appropriate types of land uses. We do understand a lot of it might be residential, but there may be some opportunities for non-residential as well. And we would like to have some thoughts about at least what you think about that this afternoon. And then there's also strategies that we might be able to develop on how you proceed. And those are sort of the recommendations, and eventually that's where the rubber is going to meet the road, so to speak, on what we can do. And then look at any incentives that we might want to engage in to address these possible annexation areas. So that's sort of the process. Got a ways to go, but wanted to have this first meeting here in this manner to sort of get some groundwork. We also understand that the EDC's been doing work, and you have a strategic plan that has 3 goals in it, and you have a nice outline of all the things that have been accomplished that preceded the development of these goals, and we've looked at this, and so we know you're thinking about what's going on in your community in terms of economic development, so we do understand at least that. We have a series of questions, and I'm going to run through these questions. I'm not going to ask you to answer them right now, but I thought I'd run through them, and you can ponder them. So this is not, we have to answer every one of these questions, but I offered them for you to at least begin to think about some of the issues that we're going to be addressing and analyzing as we go through our work. But let me just run through them, and then we'll go back. There's only 6 or 7 of them. But one of the things that we're going to talk about or think about is where are the growth centers of the city. You're rather linear with Bandera Road or 16, and then I guess you have 1506 that comes up. Is it Alamo Plaza? I don't remember what you call it. But that comes up. That is an area that runs down into San Antonio. But where do you think your growth centers will be in the future? A lot of the area to the north might be planned or is in the process of being thought about as being residential. But what do you think about those kinds of growth patterns? This is one of the maps that your EDC group has promulgated, and we've looked at it, and it begins to tell us at least what you're thinking in your mind, and you probably all have seen this already. The next question was, what does the city prefer, the locations of current growth centers, or would you prefer to see some different things? You all live and work here. You know where the growth is happening now. Is that okay, or do we want to think about something different? Another question is what is the capacity, what areas and in what capacity is future growth desirable? And sort of breaking this down between residential and non-residential. We also know that you have a future land use map. I don't know how current it is or what your current thinking is on that map, but certainly you all have been thinking about this as well. It's really no mystery. It's kind of like a puzzle. This map over here on the easel, I'll tell you that these are not in order of importance. They're just labeled so as in the evening goes by, somebody talking can talk about area B or E, and at least the group knows where we're discussing it. So these are the areas that are not in the city limits, but are in your ETJ and eligible for expansion. And so out of these areas, we're going to pick and prioritize your areas that we think need to be in the community. So these right now are classified as just potential areas, not recommended areas. In terms of infrastructure, we think you're in pretty good shape. If you think we're not in pretty good shape, we'd like to know that, but it sounds like you have a handle on your water and wastewater planning, but any thoughts on that or any challenges on that, we'd like to know that as well. These are your maps. We're just looking at them and getting familiar with them ourselves. How have you developed over time? Is it that you're going linear along Bandera Highway, or are you keeping all your non-residential growth towards the south? And do you prefer this as a way to continue, or are you thinking maybe we need to explore newer areas, maybe non-residential areas north on 16? What are your thoughts about that? We have now, Rick's gotten us all of your maps, and we're starting to go through those, and so you have a nice set of maps that you've prepared that we can start from, your zoning maps and other mapping data that we're pouring through right now. This is kind of a big one, and I'm not sure we can answer that tonight, but this is a really, really important one. You know, we can approach it from two ways. Do we want to entice people to voluntarily annex into the community, or do we want to incentivize or try some other approach? There's really, when you boil it down, there's two ways to do this. There's voluntary and involuntary. If you put the incentivizing part in it, that's really a voluntary thing. And it is, a lot of cities around the Austin area have done that and used 360 agreements and other agreements. That's really a implementation mechanism that we're going to look at in terms of steps 4 and 5. But there's ways that you can incentivize annexation, but you also have to get tougher on water and sewer and other types of provision to do that. So one thought would be, how aggressive do you think that we should be? I will tell you this, and this is sort of my editorial comments, is as our legislature meets every year, those of you that have watched it in terms of annexation law and statutes, every year it seems to get a little more difficult for municipalities to annex land involuntarily. At least that's been the trend over the last decade. We have a reprieve this coming year, but next year they'll meet and there'll sure to be another round of annexation limitations on communities. And so there was a proposal this last time that cities could not annex any land unless there was a 51% vote that you annex lands. Be the only state in the union that does that, but nevertheless it was proposed. It died in calendars, and so it didn't make it to a vote on the floor. But as you can see, the limitation of government, those kinds of issues are always on the legislator's mind, and so just want to kind of throw that out as you may ponder these different types of approaches. These were the kind of you already have a good mapping on the different annexations. Now, what are we thinking that in this strategic plan, what you're thinking, are you thinking that we want new employers, or do we want new commercial, new residential, and then infrastructure planning and funding? Those things are all going hand in hand. And infrastructure provision will certainly be a factor in whether you want to provide these services in the ETJ. All over the state of Texas, the ETJ areas are growing faster than the cities are. And the reason for this is these areas have been providing water and wastewater, water and sewer. So the question is that something that that we need to address here with SAWS or whoever your water and wastewater providers are? Those things are important. So these are the questions. I want to say this last slide for the very end, but I think what I'd like to do is go back, and then you kind of got a preview of the questions. This is not some sort of a, not trying to trick you into answers here, but what I really would like is now, you saw these questions, you can kind of, we can go back and forth on any of them. We don't have to take them in order. But I'd like the EDC and the council to engage in a little bit of dialogue about what you've been thinking about these areas in the past year. And that will help us to understand, at least, we may not have any solutions tonight, but at least help us understand the issues of what you all are thinking. And as we prepare our analysis, we'll be at least cognizant of these thoughts that you have. So Mayor, I'll turn it back over to you, and then the chairman, are you the chairperson of the EDC? Turn it back over to you all, and maybe we can start off and see how you think about some of these questions. Here again, we don't have to answer question one, then move to question two. We can bounce around. Just did this to sort of pique your interest. So
Thanks, Dan. I think what we'll do is start with EDC and just get your input, and rather than go person to person, just if you have a question or something that you would like to contribute, just raise your hand. Pat, starting with you, and then if either Kathy or Diane want to say anything, they can, and then we'll go to the department heads and then come up here to council. So EDC, anybody?
First off, we've just been given a very vast amount of information, and the packets we don't even include the map that shows the 10 different areas we need to evaluate. We need a set of maps that are large enough to be readable to work on this, a copy of the entire presentation that we can sit down and work with in a meeting to come up with ideas. At this point, I can't give you any ideas on anything from what you've thrown out in front of us. It's too broad, and there hadn't been any time for preparation on it. Sorry.
I see that there's been a lot of residential growth, not as much commercial growth.
Kathy, go ahead and use the microphone, please. You're a star.
Thank you, sir. Just from my observations, nothing that's been written, it seems to be more residential than commercial. And I think we want to flip that to be even more commercial, but still have the residential component come in. And I think that's something that I see personally. It's not anything that's been there's no facts or anything we have on paper.
Yeah, and all these maps that we're showing you are not new. I guess we misunderstood. We thought these were all maps that you'd all seen before. These are all maps that are in existence now. So we'll certainly provide working maps with our recommendations and thoughts. Tonight was really intended to just try to begin to understand some of the issues that y'all have been thinking about. There's no recommendations this evening, so that was kind of our purpose of just trying to understand what you all are thinking. We're trying to get caught up to speed, and it's more for us than you.
I think you're probably going to find that the main emphasis for commercial growth is going to be on Highway 16, and there's some small amount of potential for it on Houseman, but very little because most of that's already residential. You'll be looking out Highway 16 in the perimeter area of the highway will be the commercial growth, and I don't know if there's any potential much over on 1560 going out west on it or not. There's some area over there that could be commercial, but a lot of that's residential already too, so we're kind of limited on that. We'll have to examine infrastructure because there'll have to be a lot more sewer and water extensions to make that work as that grows out that way. And I don't know if you know it or not, but the primary growth plans for the city show basically 3/4 acre lots or something in that vicinity as a minimum lot size for subdivisions. The other ones that we have that are less than that were already platted prior to coming into the city's ETJ is the reason we have Iron Horse set up the way it is, and Lotus Crossing and some of the other subdivisions were already platted before the city was incorporated or before they came into the ETJ. So there'll be different considerations on residential in the area that we're looking at.
Do all the 3/4 acre lots, so they all have water and sewer, or are they on-site systems?
They're primarily on-site systems. Park Estates has water. Parts of Ranch Acres have water, not all of it. And none of it has sewer. That's one reason for the larger requirements, larger size. You can get by with that size with an aerobic septic system. I think you have to be an acre or more to do it with a conventional septic system. But that's going to pretty well, unless a developer wants to come in and make a proposal to the city to put the infrastructure in, which Iron Horse did, even though it was already platted, they had to be able to do the subdivision the way they did it. We're going to have to look at larger lot type additions, which I don't think anybody on the council or EDC has any objection to.
Is that mic on? Is it? Okay. Anything else? Diane, anything? Okay. Any of you guys? Ernest, Rick, Rob, Josh, speak now. Any input? And then, of course, Rick, go for it.
Well, first off, Mayor, I would suggest that during this that we actually sort of change the format of this. It doesn't. This is meant to be a workshop. It's not meant to be the standard one board speaks and then another. And I think that if we can modify it slightly to where people can interject if they want to, as long as you're willing to do that.
That point, but I wanted everyone to have a chance to initially make any comments, and then we'll kind of open it up.
Okay. One of the things that just to start this thing, because this is always initially awkward for everybody, is that, I mean, I think there are certain growth areas that we currently have. If you look at E and D to the south of Helotes, that's predominantly all residential at this point, and those are all smaller lot, much less than
with water and water connections.
Yeah, I mean, we can go to the water and sewer, but predominantly 1560, Shanefield, Braun, and Gulm all have water and sewer, correct? Yeah, they're all serviced by water and sewer, and those are all going to be either established lots or new neighborhoods that are less than a quarter acre, actually much less than a quarter acre lots. They're basically postage size lots. Now it's kind of odd actually, because if you look where the purple is and you look directly across the street where the white is, that's all currently obviously within the city of Helotes, and those are half acre plus lots. The minimum is actually, I know that Mr. Wooten, you said 3/4 acre. I think it's a little bit less than that. It's about half acre, a little bit less than half an acre or above, which is still significant size lots. I mean, if you look at Hollywood Park, Hill Country Village, these communities, Chavano Park around town, they all are larger type lots. That's kind of what Helotes was originally, in my opinion, established to be, okay? Sort of an enclave adjacent to San Antonio. But there are, in my opinion, and I know I'm kind of sidetracking here, but in my opinion, the character of Helotes has changed over the course of 20 years because we now have this hodgepodge of large lot neighborhoods and a significant amount of small lot neighborhoods too. So it's not just, in my opinion, a one-size-fits-all community, okay? But anyway, potential growth areas, I see everything on E and D, either neighborhood commercial, like gas stations. There's a Walmart going in, one of the community Walmarts that's going in right there at Gulm and 1560.
We don't have that map.
Down in
Gulm.
here?
Shane,
That's
they're
right
both
there.
the same.
Yeah, but we don't
Yeah.
have it here.
Yeah. And there's a CVS right there as well. So it's kind of like neighborhood retail. There's not large, there is one shopping center, but it's not huge shopping center type development, right? And then A and B above, those are going to be large acreage tracts of land for the most part. There are some neighborhoods in there that are actually smaller lots, but you're talking about a significant amount of acreage in A and B, and that's really all sort of undeveloped at this time.
Now, is the frontage going to be non-residential on 16 or is on the Bandera Highway, or is it going to be all residential along that frontage?
That's what we're trying to.
That's what we're trying
That's
to-
what we're trying to find out.
That's what we're trying to find out, but you know, that, I'm trying to get to the issue, but the issue is that, I mean, not to put too fine a point on it, but you have no control in A and B.
Correct.
They can do what they want.
That is correct.
And so we got to get out there and understand what the ramifications are of either doing or not doing out in that area.
Yeah.
And the way it is now, to me, that's a pretty big area, as well as D and E, that the character of that's going to affect the image of Helotes. So it's kind of really, really important that we get this figured out. But I think that's an issue that's really one that we need to wrestle with.
Okay, Bert has a question here.
Well, I think also what we have to realize too is that, of course, we're a general law city. That's a big hurdle. But another thing we're also battling.
But not insurmountable.
Well, it's a pretty big hurdle. But we're also battling environmental concerns. We have a nice piece of property over there at Scenic Loop and Bandera Road that's in the city limits. That is what? 75% of it is under the
About half.
blind spider deal or whatever it is.
About half. Cricket.
Okay, that deal.
Cave cricket.
Yeah. So that's another issue that you might want to, put on your deal there. That is a big concern. And we already offer incentives to our businesses in the city limits. But correct me if I'm wrong, didn't we offer something to the CVS there at 1560 and Shanefield? And they did not accept our offer?
We reached out to them and asked them to consider annexation and looked at a 380, but we never got any real response.
That'd be another thing that I would, see if there's anything that we can do to, sweeten the pot or whatever. Let's see, is there anything else? That's all I have for right now.
Okay. Let's go ahead and each one of us comment, if you would, and then we'll have kind of a roundtable, if that's okay.
Okay.
Cindy?
Yeah, these are all good questions. As far as a business corridor, if we look at the second map that's on our dies here, and that area that's gray is the Helotes ETJ, correct? So this would be, like, if you're looking down 1560, it's the part on the right, or south. So I think a lot of that area could potentially be business-related down that corridor right there. The problem that we have, again, is we do have a lot more houses now in the smaller, the smaller lots. Now, as far as going up Bandera Highway, I've noticed that there's a lot of smaller subdivisions, again, with the smaller houses that are kind of butting up to the highway. They're not going to take too kindly to having a business corridor in front of them. We've already gone through this with several, so I don't know how we're.
But they're not going to have a choice. Business can go there anyway now. If it's not in the city limits,
Correct.
they're going to have a business corridor there whether they want it or not. One of the issues is that if we can have a strategy where we can get them into the city limits, then we can manage that for them. Without that, then they're left to, you can imagine what kind of land uses
Right.
can happen. So
that's an important, I guess, PR thing too, is to let them understand why we want to do this. If we do want it to go up further and make Highway 16 a business corridor, which to me seems very logical, that we would be able to control it better and make it look nicer and that kind of thing. I'm not opposed to that. I think that's just a logical way to do it. So I'm thinking 1560, and then up Highway 16 would be a business corridor, and we would continue trying to do that and be able to regulate it. And again, giving out, just reaching out to the businesses who want to come in with the 360s and incentives. I don't think the home rule thing is going to happen here in a long time, if at all. There's just so much negativity towards that kind of thing. We're just
let me just ask you point blank, why do you think there's a lot of negativity towards that?
Because right now, I guess the political thought is limited government. And the minute that we become home rule, we become more of a Goliath. We can just start annexing at will. And a lot of people, like you just said, the Texas legislature is getting ready to say, no, you can't do that. Even if you are a home rule city, they're going to make it real difficult. So I'm thinking it's better I was actually for home rule a long time ago until I got on the city council and saw, I guess the ramifications of it. Yes, it's good for the government officials to be able to do whatever they want, but as a citizen who lives here, I'm not sure that it's gonna take. The other thing is, I believe it was Leon Valley, which is our little sister city down the road, 3 times have put home rule on and 3 times have lost. The citizens have voted it down. I think the prevailing thought is it's just not going to pass. And it's not even something that I'm even considering putting on there. So I think we need to move forward with incentivizing. I'm not saying you called it a passive, making this, being passive about annexing these properties. I think offering incentives is not passive. So I'm not sure that, I don't want to sit back and just.
It's carrot and stick. It's carrot and stick.
I don't think that we need to sit here and just let whatever happen. I think that we should move forward and say, hey, look, this is what we've planned. We think this is a good idea for this area. Let's work together and let's come in the city. It's better to be in the city of Helotes than to be out there by yourself or in the city of San Antonio. So anyway, that's kind of my thoughts. But we do have a lot of residential. I guess the final thought is the reason I think that we need to be a little more proactive is, a healthy city has 30% sales tax revenues, 30% property tax, and then 40% of other fees and that. And we're not even close. We rely too much on property taxes. And so I think we should have a little more business. I'm not saying we should have 75% business in the other, residential. I like the residential community, but to have that good a percentage, a healthy city economically, we need to have a more business in our area.
I agree. We've worked at other cities that are home rule and completely turned them around, and now they're bustling and booming and doing well, and some of them have gone home rule and some of them haven't. So it can be done. It can be done. I mean, Bee Cave. Bee Cave's home rule forever. All that happened under back up. Bee Cave was general law, and all that happened under general law. All that Bee Cave now has happened when they were a general law city.
Bee Cave, Texas. Bee Cave? Yeah.
By Austin, up there by
Yeah.
Austin. So, I mean, it can be done, but you have to get tough on water and sewer. You have to get into an aggressive education process of the benefits. Let them come in. They can petition the city. Let them petition their neighborhoods and draw themselves in, and they can petition you to annex them. And a majority of the property owners, and they can do that themselves. And maybe once they figure out that they're a lot better off in terms of protection. Deed restrictions only go so far, then that might be option 2 as well.
Anything else, Cindy?
No, I'm done.
Paul? Any input?
I don't know if I could do any input right now.
Okay. Bert, you've already, Alex, you have anything?
Yeah, thank you. Earlier you asked, you indicated that this is sort of a finding session for you as to what we're looking for rather than solutions at this point. So with that in mind, I would like to be able to see, as you move forward, more detailed maps, in particular of the undeveloped areas. Those areas that are currently not developed at all, because that's where the growth is. We see lots of maps at this point. We know the maps, we live here, of the areas that are residential. Well, if it's already completely developed residential of 500 houses, there's nothing that I can see. If it's in the city limits, it's already here. You're not going to change anything about that. If it's not in the city limits and they already have sewer and water, I don't see how a carrot or a stick comes into play. What's their incentive? I would hope that your firm could come and tell us, how could you get a neighborhood that's already got sewer, already got water, the developer's already done everything, there is no vacant land, the developer hasn't held out 2 acres and is threatening to put in a very offensive business at the entrance to the neighborhood? What are those incentives that are available in that situation to ask that neighborhood to come in? I'd like to see a list of those. That's what I would hope to be able to see. The other thing I would like to be able to see would be a map that tells us of all of the areas that are slightly developed that are likely to change development. We've all lived in areas, and most of us have lived out here for decades, and have seen areas that were all residential right along major thoroughfares, and as the road went from a 2-lane road to a 4-lane road to a 5-lane road, all of a sudden the people who had lived there for 30 years and always thought it was residential, all of a sudden sell it to something and a business goes in. Where are those areas that you see that are more likely to change the usage from residential or slight use into a potential business use that we could work onto that? But again, I would like to see, how do we incentivize those owners to come in for 2 reasons. One, soon enough that we can actually control what goes in there, and also allow them to see that benefit. What are the costs associated with that? There are costs associated with annexing. You reference a number of times to sewer and water. We don't own the sewer and the water. They're both SAWs. And so we can put in sewer water at a huge expense. And so what are the offsets of that expense? And how do we phrase that in such a way that a development, especially a lot of these in the purple area at the bottom, your D and E section, they're already developed. So what are specific incentives that we can get? That's part of what I would like to be able to see moving down the road. With regard to the business corridor thing, and I know that some of the neighborhoods are already developing where the back fences are right there right up against the easement on Highway 16. But there are a number of them that will go in there, and as many developers do, they'll hold out 2 or 3 acres at the entrance to their neighborhood, so that when the neighborhood is filled out and 1,000 people live there, then the value of that 2 acres, which was really insignificant when they started building, and now all of a sudden becomes a $100,000 lot, they can then turn around and sell that. How do we get them to want to come in before that happens? Because again, you can go to a place that's already bought the property and it's a CVS or a Walmart or you name it that's going in. Why would they want to do that? You know, they're already paying for their own infrastructure, their own water, sewer, engineering, and all that. They reluctantly come to us for sign approval, but why would they want to automatically add a little bit of sales tax to their retail outlet when they're paying all of the costs? I know 380 agreements, we've done a few, but when we offer them, they still don't. How, again, I would like to see what the plan would be to go with these entities, to take a look at these properties before it's already sold, before the business has already made their decision to buy the property and spend the money. So those are some of the things that I was looking at. Thank you.
And you just hit on it exactly. You know, part of this really has to be education. I'm sure all of you saw the news reports 2 years ago, north of San Antonio. That's the train. It's a bad situation out there. It's all in the ETJ. And when it comes time for fixing stuff out there, it's this. And the county doesn't want to do it, and the county's not equipped to really do all the services that cities are in terms of urbanized areas. And of course, the city doesn't want it. The city of San Antonio didn't want it now because it's too costly to fix everything out there. So we're really trying to be proactive and take a look at this area and see what we can do to try to avoid that, because that's where it'll go. And it may be 10, 20, 30, 40 years from now, but that's where it'll go, because there's you got to own something, and the county doesn't want to own it. But Bexar County's no different than any other county. Counties all over Texas are like this. Don't pick on Bexar County. No county likes to do this. So that's the slow-moving bullet that we're wanting to make sure that we address. And working on these types of strategies is a way to try to avoid that and coming up with them. So it's got to be a balance between getting folks to understand what can happen if we don't do this and get them to come in. Yes, it's a little easier for strategies on non-residential than it is residential, but you have to work a little harder on the education side of it with residential.
So future meetings, you would be then presenting us with these strategies?
That's the work. That's the job.
Good.
This day here is more for us to make sure we understand and we have a chance before we charge off and do a lot of analysis and work. I've always thought that it was at least appropriate to ask the client what they thought the issues were and what they are thinking, because you all have been and worked here a long time. You at least have an understanding of what the issues are. We don't have the solutions today, but you already have identified, on my count, at least 15 issues that we need to be aware of. So,
Can I interject something, Mayor?
Yeah, just, Joe, I see you guys here. We have 2 members of our Planning and Zoning Commission. If y'all want to come up and sit at the table, feel free to do so and join in, okay? Or just raise your hand. Yeah, Rick?
To bounce off one of the things that Councilman Blue said about sort of redevelopment of residential areas to commercial, I think one of the biggest places for that is Hausman Road. Because Hausman Road is going from 2 lanes to 4 lanes. It's basically turning into a Stone Oak Parkway from Bandera Road to 1604. And yes, as you're going towards 1604, on the left-hand side, there's a lot of existing residential that are smaller tract homes, smaller lot homes. You're not going to change that, I understand. But everything on the opposite side of the highway is currently zoned residential in the city of Helotes, but it's on acreage. So there is the potential there, if the city wanted to allow it, to increase, to rezone those properties and increase the commercial on that corridor. And that would actually be on the going to work side, which is beneficial for a lot of restaurants, coffee shops, things like that. So
That's fairly limited, but that's an option. Ed, do you have anything?
Just comment, like Councilmember Massey said, we've got to strike that balance between the residential property tax base and the commercial base, and I think that's something this council has strived to do over the years. As far as going to the north of 16, I guess, it just makes sense to continue that commercial corridor. The question is SAWS, that which can bring us the infrastructure, the water and the sewer. I hear developers having a difficult time trying to get their developments up and run up that way. So how are we going to get them to, entertain the idea of commercial development up there as well? And then we have to identify those annexed areas, I guess, to carve out the space for the commercial development within the residential development, like Councilmember Lou said. So I guess until we address that, infrastructure issue, and whatever obstacles SAWS may throw at us, can we, identify or target certain areas to the north?
Be sure the infrastructure. But sure enough, that's going to be, so we're not going to be. That's why you have all. So that's fine. Are much, much different than the regulations municipalities have and authorities. What we want to have in our community and how it. One thing that's evident to me, if you look at your they're pretty closely attached. Term of art. What happens? So you do have a very vested interest to see about making sure. SAWS, and so all right, now surely thought now since we've gone.
Well, I have a few, and then we'll do that. Just looking back at historically what's happened and where I feel some of the potential is in our ETJ, back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, whenever a subdivision was scheduled for development and being planned, much like Alex was saying, in the front there would always be on both sides of the entrance, some commercial lots set aside. And that was for convenience stores and that type of thing. I haven't seen that in some of the latest developments, especially around here. And I think there are a couple of reasons for that. First of all, going out north on Bandera Road, what I see the trend is that we're losing a lot of potential commercial growth. Take San Antonio. They come out 1604, they go Calabria and they annex those rights away. and 1,000 feet on each side, and then they zone that 1,000 feet for commercial. So nobody can do anything but commercial. We're handcuffed by being the type of government we are. We can't do that. We were able to go out and take a giant step to allow ourselves to be able to receive annexation or grant annexation to those areas that would come to us by petition, as you said. But until that happens, we don't have the luxury of going out and annexing any area along any of our roadways and then zoning additional property commercial. So what's happening with MI Homes, KB Homes, you see Sanctuary out there, Los Reyes, it's been there a long time. I think it was Alex said that they do come right up to the right-of-way. KB Homes, in their new area out north of us, they've already built their rock wall right on the right-of-way. So I see our potential commercial development evaporating. And part of the reason, as we were saying, is no utilities out there. The other is those tracks, the way they're laid out and the size they are, when a developer purchases them for residential, they're going to have to build as many homes as they can on there to make it economically feasible. So they're not going to give up, even at the entrance, 2 or 3 or 4 acres or more for commercial development. So as these residential subdivisions get started and get built out, our potential for commercial is pretty well going to be shot. Right now, the most that's happening that I've seen is along Shanefield and Gom on our side in our ETJ with a little retail center there at Shanefield and our Gom and 1560, and then the CVS at Shanefield and 1560, and some other stuff. They've already built, and they have ignored us with our offers to welcome them into our city and hopefully to get that sales tax. Because just offering police, fire protection, public works, these kinds of services to them for the additional tax, there's no carrot there. The carrot is shriveled up. They have no interest in it. And so that's the challenge. Rick and I have met through the years with several homeowners associations in different areas in our ETJ, and we answer all their questions. We give them the benefits of being in the city. They've expressed the interest, but then they have trouble getting 51% of their property owners to sign a petition to come up here and ask for annexation. The few that have done that, I'm thinking of Helotes Ranch Acres Unit 6, primarily. They came up here and asked to be annexed, and we looked at it, and the property values didn't really make it feasible, but we ran into a major hurdle with their streets. Their streets are not where they're supposed to be, and none of the property owners wanted to grant us easements to make the streets work to where we could maintain them, and so that fell through the cracks. San Antonio Ranch has come to us looking to be annexed at one point, but they have an old MUD debt, municipal utility district debt, that pretty well was a major hurdle there, and we haven't been able to work that out. So those are the only 2 subdivisions that I can think of that actually came to us looking for annexation that didn't work out. The rest of it we'll just have to keep working on how to, I hesitate to use the word entice, but that seems to be what applies here, and make it to where the benefits outweigh the costs. We were talking to a builder just last week about potentially coming in, and their concern was for property taxes. And we just picked an average price of $300,000 per property in the subdivision, which would be somewhere around $1,000 property tax to the city, and that concerned them as to what their future home buyers would think about that extra $1,000. And so these are the questions that keep coming up to us, and we can answer them, but I'm not sure it's enough to really entice them to come into the city. So we're back to the same problem. Our commercial land is going away. and being used by residential developers, and those developers are going 100% residential. So therein lies the challenge, and it's going to be interesting to see what you guys come up with as far as sticks and carrots.
Can I?
Okay, that being said, we'll go to a roundtable. Rick, you got anything else?
Yes, two things. Number one, I think it's extremely important, and this should go into y'all's, or could go into y'all's report, is to, I mean, residential is important because without rooftops, you don't have commercial. So it's kind of a catch-22. You can't have commercial without residential, but yet we want more commercial. So I think it's important that we have a plan put together on these neighborhoods that are being constructed in our ETJ before they actually start selling lots, which is the mayor referenced the meeting that we had last week. It's with a neighborhood that hasn't sold any lots yet. They just have their model homes up. I think it's important that the city get out there before they actually start building their model homes so that we can enter into 380 agreements or something to incentivize before they sell the homes. Because once they start selling the homes, they don't want to, even though they could, because they still own 51%, they don't want to do it because they've already sold homes to people in the unincorporated parts of the county. So I think it's important that we have a plan going forward, a more succinct plan at trying to get in front of them before they sell those homes. The other thing that is a huge impediment to development in A and B is sewer. There is sewer. Can you flip to the sewer mains and the water mains, please? If you look going north, there's water mains going up along Bandera Road, and there is a sewer main going up Bandera Road to that top neighborhood, which is San Antonio Ranch on the top left, okay? Water is not the issue. They can build more pipes and they can flow it with more water. The problem that we have is everything that is developed to the north of us on sewer has to flow through Helotes and to 1604 and underneath 1604 to get back to their sewage processing plants, right? Well, when they developed from Cedar Springs, which is the neighborhood directly across from Walmart, okay? When they developed that going north, they started building with subpar or sub-diameter pipe. So everything basically flows and constricts when it gets in the middle of Helotes. And so we have to, SAWS or us or somebody has to start thinking about upsizing the pipes going north. Otherwise, we can't have any more residential or commercial. No, the county.
Why don't you approve them?
We have an agreement with the county that we both review them, but they are the approving entity. So, and I do know that, you know, you have to receive letters of certification from SAWS.
An equal of what you would do inside. Do not approve those plats out there. If they're undersized lines.
Want to comment on that?
As far as the water and sewer and the sizing of that, that's all done through SAWS and their master planning. So we don't really get involved with sizing of the mains. What Rick was referring to is we're doing some expansion along 16 from Scenic Loop down the Circle A, and in doing that, we found that there's a lift station and then their main line that goes through that subdivision is undersized. So it's more of a planning issue with SAWS more so than anything else.
But, I mean, you can find a way, or if you know of ways to where we can place restrictions on SAWS for a planning process, or I don't know what that would be, then that would be something good to hear in the report, because that is,
SAWS,
you can't have a commercial development without sanitary sewer. You can, but it's not gonna be big.
right, SAWS can be a part. And probably ratcheting up some of this. that's the stick part. We need to do it.
I think what Rick and Byron are referring to is the new developments that are being platted. It's not really an issue because everything is properly sized there. It's the added volume or the increased volume coming from the north into the existing lines that were built 20, 30 years ago that are taking that extra volume. They can't handle it because they're already at capacity. So that just means in looking at those developments to the north, they're gonna have to have either an increased main that's already here or lay a second one next to it somehow. That's been
That's
part of
answer.
the discussion.
We can't, just because it's not inadequate now, we can't say, oh, let's continue on with it. So I think we're gonna have to look at some of those policy.
And SAWS has admitted that that would be their responsibility to do. We just haven't had to have that done yet.
Yeah, and we've met with SAWS and we've talked about, like the mayor mentioned, doing parallel lines or another route. And then also, once you get further out there, it's just not feasible as far as gravity, so you'll have to add some lift stations. And then there may be another route that they may be looking at. And I know they're looking at, their master plans and updating both the sewer and the water. So that's something that we would have to maybe.
What?
Aren't they about to the point that they're going to have to put in another sanitary sewer facility out in that area?
That's what,
They're getting to the point they can't keep pumping stuff into town. They're gonna have to put in another sewer plant to accommodate that.
Yeah, they if added flow to the sewer system and if it has to go through Iron Horse, yes, they'll have to upgrade that lift station at some point.
I'm talking about building a whole new sewer plant.
Possibly, yes.
I mean, so we're gonna have more that we can't control. I mean, I think this is. Understand exactly what you're doing. They've already been. They can help us. Has to be other stuff.
we had that fantasy for a while until we had to start dealing with them, and then it hits you real quick
Yeah, but
that they
this
don't
was-
really care.
Has it been in the last 2 years?
Basically,
Oh, yeah.
basically SAWS, they don't build pipeline. I mean, they rely on the developer to build their infrastructure. They just maintain it.
Okay, anybody else? Let's just raise your hand if you have any questions or any other comments.
Mayor, I'd like to say is like for each division, A, B, C, D, and E, I kind of would like to look at the environmental issues, the structural, the, I wrote a lot of things down here.
Rick, get her the,
Utilities,
Rick,
the sewer,
get her
the
the mic.
water, by each section, so we can kind, because not every section is gonna be the same.
Had the same level of
Well,
issues.
what, it's not the same.
Kathy, Mike.
They want you to speak into.
Yes.
All right, so I was saying for each section, the A through E, because they're not all alike, that each one needs to be taken individually, and we talk about the environmental issues, the structural issues, level of depth of water, where the water, sewer, if there is, if there's not, then what do you do? So I think each section needs to be taken individually. I don't think it's a one-size-fits-all here.
And talking about the lift station at Ironhurst Canyon, the last time we had a meeting with SAWS, as far as I know, it's still part of the overall plan is to rebuild that lift station at Ironhurst Canyon to enable them to handle the additional flow coming from north on Bandera Road. And each developer is gonna have to contribute a certain amount of money per what they call an EDU. And is that still part of the plan?
They charge impact fees?
They're not really calling it that, I don't think, but it's similar, yeah. Is it an impact fee? Per EDU? Yeah, okay.
But they're aware of it, it's just a matter of, who's gonna pay for it.
Anybody else? You guys? Anything? Going once? Twice? Okay. Anything from council? Cindy? Anything else? Paul? Bert?
Dan?
Yes, sir.
The last time you came in front of city council, you mentioned, and maybe I'm wrong, but you mentioned something about getting back to annexation, that it was against the law for the city to, what would you call it, promote annexation? Did you say something like that? I mean, you have to be, I think your wording was like, you have to be careful when you do it.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're not engaging in an annexation plan where we're going to go out. Is what's exactly of what we're doing. Because we can't. The recommendations. So I don't know if that was getting it. I'm trying to have a hard time remembering, but.
I mean, you have to educate the people that live. Is that?
I think that's a. Somebody's. I mean, I hate to be. And if you. You just can't do everything that you want to do, even though you're living in the country is a little different.
Are you aware of our building permit litigation that's going on?
I am not.
Yeah, I think that would be something that you would.
Rick can catch me up on that.
Well, it's relatively simple. I mean, where to be charged building permits under ATJ, it's
Oh, that's going on in several places.
Yeah.
I am, yeah. I can get you a set of attorneys. Some attorneys say you can. And I'll round them up. But yeah, I am several cities throughout Texas. So.
predominantly near here or up in, well, my understanding for it, it's blowing up in Dallas.
Right.
Alex?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did have another thing I would like to see down the road, and this may or may not be within the scope of your team's abilities, but as we look to potentially annex, obviously in a voluntary way, we may find ourselves with areas that have usages or potential usage that does not conform with our existing zoning code. Does your team plan to make any recommendations as they look at our zoning code to say, before these things come into the city, you should have a code addressing this or that type of business? For example, not long ago, our mayor said that because of the new ETJ facility, we should pass a potential tax on hotels. Well, we don't have any zoning for hotels. I'm not so sure if our zoning code really has all sorts of rules and regulations if one of these areas came to us, maybe with a 380 agreement, said, we're going to build a hotel right here. And guess what? We want to be annexed. Are we prepared? Does your team have any other way of looking at our zoning code and saying, these are some big gaps that given your area, these might come to you in the next 5 years? How are you going to be prepared for when that happens to make sure you're not doing it after the fact and/or zoning around a business as opposed to having the business come into an existing set of rules?
If you annex anybody, you have to continue that land use. If it was legal, then go for illegal. So those kinds of things, that one. So that all. We've also found that, so I mean, you know, it all,
you got a subdivision that's in the ETJ, and they sit out there long enough, we can give that ETJ back to San Antonio, and they'll be paying San Antonio taxes. They'll take it back. On a nice subdivision, it's already developed and everything in place, that's right here by them, they'll take it back, and they'll be paying twice the tax rate they're paying in Lotus.
other thoughts?
Anybody?
The other comment I had is I don't necessarily agree with Cynthia. I think that we could get home rule to pass if it was properly presented. It's to the benefit of the people that are already here more than anything else, and that's the ones voting on it.
Well, as of last year, there were 24 general law cities that could be home rule that had not chosen to be home rule. And the Texas Municipal League did a little bit of a study, and there were a variety of reasons, from some of what Cynthia said to others. And we're looking at it and trying to figure out how to present it. But I know Bulverde tried and failed 3 or 4 times, then finally got it to work. Leon Valley, you said 3 times. So it's not uncommon, but it's just educating the folks. Rick and I are, like I say, been studying it for a while. The only real advantage I've seen so far is the annexation aspect of it, but the legislature is each session attacking that capability of a home rule city, and there's some other issues that the legislature is going to be taking up. So it's not a smooth road, but it is something that, as Cynthia said, we need to look at. We wouldn't be able to do it for May. I would be very hesitant to do it for November with the presidential election. So we're looking at least going into 2017 or 2018 before we would probably really look at putting a commission together and how we would do that. So there's a lot of steps, and we're looking at all of that, and we'll present it to council at some point.
I have a couple of comment about, we do allow in certain, I think the business district, hotels. You said that we don't allow hotels in the city.
Not in the city.
No, we have
Right.
No, what I meant by that was that there are potential things that we could find ourselves annexing that don't currently comply with our zoning code. My request was that they take a look at the zoning code and say, are there certain types of businesses that you should be prepared to have a zone and a regulation for before they're potentially annexed? I may have been wrong with regard to the hotel. I know we have all sorts of things that would make that very difficult. I don't believe we have apartment complexes
Right.
in there. We have a cluster development, but not apartments. So there are things that could potentially be in the city that I would like us to see. You analyze that, give us a list and say, you don't have this, you might want to consider crafting an ordinance or a regulation before that potential shows up on your doorstep.
So you're talking about ETJ development, and then
Yes.
part of that coming into the ETJ is to ask for annexation.
Right.
And that could be.
Existing territory, but also potential to come into the city with a use that we don't have a regulation to talk
The
And
way I
that's where
took that is,
development agreements can
we want
come
to make
in.
sure we don't have any impediments if somebody's saying, well, we can't come in
Right.
your city because we don't have zoning for. And what we would be looking for somebody that wants to come in.
So we would have to decide then if we would want a hotel, a 6, 5, 8-story hotel. And where would that be? Across the street from y'all's place?
There's a little planning, we
thinking
got to do
out on
here, and that's
the
kind of what we're
outskirts.
On the
talking about.
outskirts.
Well, also those apartments they built on Shanefield, they're three stories already, if not 4. Those wouldn't be allowed under our codes now.
Shanefield, oh, that's over there, that's okay.
But still, we wouldn't allow it.
But we just approved their sign.
No, well, yeah, but because the ETJ, you're right, we have to think differently now because we're
Right.
larger now, and when you think of the outskirts, but when you think of
That's a very good
the
point.
core point, the core area, obviously, we don't want a big hotel in the middle right here, but out in the outskirts where there are already those kinds of things, that's fine.
Yeah.
So I think that's a great idea.
Yes, it is.
We've got a few notes, Mayor and Mr. Chairman. Is there anything else that you'd like to make us aware of?
So you have enough to
Oh, yeah.
go
No,
out of
we-
here and
I think
go
we-
forth and work?
I think we know. You, but also see, they have a close interest in all this.
Get something back to us by the first of the week.
No, not so
Okay.
much that. We'll get with,
Get it back
we'll
to
get
us by
with
the
Rick
first of
on
the
the
week.
schedule. But we'll be back though,
Okay, one last chance. Anything?
and we will get information to you when by the way, decisions on things. We'll certainly have it. We just didn't have it today. So are we. But we won't be after a while.
Okay, so, one last chance. Anything? Rick, you have any last thoughts? Anybody? Nobody? Okay. Well, that being the case, we will go ahead and adjourn our workshop. And we're doing that at 5:19. And you may mute us.
Hey, can we turn off these individually?
But he's hit the mute button. You can turn